If you've been thinking about getting serious with your money, like actually serious, now's the time. The Motley Fool is offering new members 50% off their iconic stock recommendation service, Stock Advisor. This is the same service that's crushed the market with recommendations that have returned 1,057% since inception, compared to the S&P 500's 180% over that same period. This isn't guesswork. The Motley Fool has a track record of finding companies before they become household names. So if you want to invest smarter and you like saving money while doing it, go to fool.com/listen to claim your 50% off discount off a 1-year term of Stock Advisor. Again, that's fool.com/listen. Returns of 1,057% are from the Motley Fool's product Stock Advisor and measured against S&P 500 returns of 180% as of July 10th, 2025. Past performance is not an indicator of future results. All investing involves a risk of loss. Individual investment results may vary.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
And welcome to the Kulturecast. I'm Chris Stachiw. I am joined, as always, by my cohort and co-host, Mr. Eric Kniss.
What's up? Hello.
Wondering how long you're going to wait there.
Yeah, I don't know. Dramatic effects.
And we are joined today to talk Logan by two good friends of mine. The award-winning director of the original comedy series, TacticalGirls, the dashing Canadian himself, Mr. Matt Campagna.
Thank you very much for having me.
And another Canadian, hailing from the great city of Toronto, Mr. Ash Suri.
What's going on, everyone?
My favorite young Canadian mind. Oh my god. So today we're going to be talking about Logan, 2017's first comic book movie and the final Wolverine film. I say final in quotations because I personally don't believe it, but we'll get to that when we talk about the movie. The IMDb synopsis for the film is, in the near future, a wary Logan cares for an ailing Professor X in a hideout on the Mexican border, but Logan's attempts to hide from the world and his legacy are upended when a young mutant arrives, being pursued by dark forces.
Hello? You know you gotta pay for that, right? Hey, come on.
Not okay. We got ourselves an X-Men fan. Maybe a quarter of it happened, and not like this. In the real world, people die.
Logan.
I don't want to talk about it.
Logan.
Just stop.
Be careful. I need the girl.
What girl?
Go get her.
No. No. No.
And we're down.
She's like you. Very much like you.
I am not whatever it is you think I am.
She needs our help.
Someone will come along.
Someone has come along. This is what life looks like. People who love each other. A home. You should take a moment. Feel it. You still have time.
Starting with you, Mr. Campagna, I know you're pretty high on the film. What are your thoughts on it?
I think much like every Wolverine movie, this movie did a really great job of being true to some of its source material and really shit the bed in other spots. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I love Westerns. So for me, this was my favorite of the three almost good movies that Wolverine has had. But, you know, they have kind of all the same pitfalls. And it's not like they're different mistakes. They make the same mistake in every Wolverine movie. But it's kind of the biggest shame that they made a mistake in his last one. Because now, basically, Wolverine's been in two solid, good movies. And it was only X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past. He didn't even get his own great solo movie. And that's a bit of a shame.
Ash, I know you're pretty high on the film as well. What did you think?
I liked it a lot. And like Matt, you know, I like Westerns because they have very simple premises, but because of that, they're allowed to be very character driven. But, you know, that all said, there are some places where I think, you know, they did mess up in regards to character. And mainly that was because, you know, they had a little too many of them. And it kind of rehashed some of the really tired tropes of the X-Men films. Overall, though, I don't know. I think it was a step up from the Wolverine, though I think people are going to give it a bad rep for kind of like going a little out there near the end. And I didn't enjoy the, I don't know if I want to call it a twist, but the surprise villain near the end. I thought he could have been handled better.
Mr. Kniss, you and I talked last night at 3 a.m. my time, 1 a.m. your time a little bit about the film, but I'm curious, given about 12 hours to ruminate on it, what are your thoughts on the film?
My opinion has stayed pretty much the same. It's good. It's not great. I, too, like everybody else on this podcast, it sounds like, am a big fan of Westerns, like huge fan, like grew up on them and everything. And this movie wanted to be a Western so bad, and it just didn't quite make it there for me. I think if they would have thrown it a little harder into the Western direction, I would have liked it a lot more. This movie, there's a lot of things about this movie that are just not quite there for me. Overall, it's really good. Is it the greatest comic book movie ever made? Like a lot of people are, playing it up to be. Not even a little bit for me. Yeah, good, not great.
I'm gonna completely echo Eric here. I thought it was good, not great, but there are some things in this movie that really bothered me. And I'm gonna be, 100% forthcoming. I haven't really liked a single X-Men movie. For some reason, I personally just don't find the X-Men, similarly to the Fantastic Four, I don't find them to be particularly compelling film characters. The comic books are a different story, but then again, when you have a team like the X-Men in the comic books, there's a lot less financial restraints. So you can have all sorts of crazy team-ups. You can have all the characters represented in a much more, complete way, as opposed to in the films where they've the only time they ever had what I would consider to be the full cast was in X-Men 3, and shockingly it fucking sucked because
Brett Ratner, but
also because they didn't give the characters anything interesting to do. They just had they had characters on screen just to be like, checked that box, checked that box, checked that box.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brett Ratner is a huge issue. But come on, Rush Hour is an American film classic.
It doesn't mean you should let the man touch X-Men. And plus, it's not like Brett Ratner even had much lead time. That was Fox shitting the bed by throwing Bryan Singer off the lot when he decided to also direct a Superman movie.
Right.
And Fox was like, no, you get to be us or them, not both. And that simultaneously screwed up Superman and basically 5 years of X-Men.
Wow.
Yep, nice choices there, studios, nice choices.
But that being said, like I said, I've never been a huge fan of the X-Men movies. I think even the good ones or even the ones that are the best ones are just good, not great. The Wolverine, kind of side films where it's just him, I know this is going to sound controversial. Yeah, Hugh Jackman looks like Wolverine, sort of.
Not really.
So yeah, sort of. Like, that's what people think
tall,
Wolverine looks like.
Too good looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's committed to the role. He's committed to the role in a beautiful way. But he doesn't really look at all like Wolverine.
Not like the comic book Wolverine. And mind you, we've had this conversation, Matt and I and Ash on several podcasts that the three of us have been on, talking about the way that characters are changed for film versus, the way they're portrayed in the comic books and all that. But, I honestly, and this is going to sound terrible, I wasn't super excited to see Logan. I honestly have never had any interest in the film character of Wolverine. The character of Wolverine has been dead in the comic books for, I want to say, at least 3 years now.
It's not been too long, but he's been. The Wolverine in his prime is gone. Old Man Logan is now an official character in canon. In the main universe. And so there is a character named Wolverine, and she's awesome. But this movie, Logan, was essentially a combination of the Old Man Logan comics and the introduction of X-23, Laura, as Logan's clone from the comics as well. And that the sort of bastardization of the Old Man Logan story to bring it into an exclusively X-Men canon is, I think, a lot of the problem. On the one hand, you replace the character of Hawkeye in the comics, which you can't do if you're Fox because you don't own Avengers, with Patrick Stewart, older version of Professor X, which was beautiful.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
I thought that was excellent. But unfortunately, the villains in Old Man Logan are part of what makes that comic book so amazing. He deals with the Red Skull. He deals with the Hulk gang, which is an entire crew of inbred descendants of Bruce Banner. It's an amazing storyline. And the villains in that piece, who are responsible for the murder of Logan's family, it gives him his motivation to bust the claws out and kill some people in the comics. But the greatest thing about that comic is the explanation of how we're in this world where there are no X-Men. There's just Wolverine by himself. And if you're going to put forth, for the first movie out of 9, a world where there are no more mutants, you really need to explain 2 things to the satisfaction of the audience. 1, where did the living ones go? And 2, why are there no more being born? Because in the comic, they don't really explain why there are no more being born, but they do a beautiful job of explaining what happened to the characters we love. And in this movie, they managed to give like an afterthought to where did all the mutants go? Corn syrup, all right. But the idea of where did the X-Men go is barely hinted at. And that, to me, is the saddest change. The idea that you're not going to give Wolverine in the comic, spoiler alert for the comic, Wolverine murders the entire X-Men. And he does it because he's been manipulated into thinking everyone around him is a villain. And when the villain takes away that manipulation, Wolverine realizes he just killed everyone in the X-Mansion. And it's brutal, amazing, it's haunting. It's the reason Logan is such a pacifist and the reason he's changed. But in this film, they don't really explain beyond a tiny hinting what happened to the X-Men. And I think not giving that is a lot of the reason we don't care about these characters as much as we should or we could in a movie of this magnitude. This is Hugh Jackman's last outing. If they gave his character that, I think it is. I think he's done.
I think that Fox and Marvel are going to come to some sort of agreement, and he's going to be in an MCU movie.
I don't think so.
Or they'll put him in another X-Men movie because the X-Men movies don't take place in 2029.
That's, yeah.
What's realistically stopping him? Like, they offer him enough money This isn't wrestling where his body is given out. I mean, Hugh Jackman is going to be in...
A little bit it is. The guy needs to eat nothing but boiled chicken for like 8 months to make one of these movies. At a certain point, you got to ask yourself, if I gave my character the perfect out after 17 years of committing blood, sweat, and tears to this role, do I want to come back for another cameo? I don't know. Maybe Deadpool will have a really cool role for Wolverine, and he might have a scene or two. But I would be shocked if he comes back for a full-on, hey, look, it's Wolverine with the X-Men kind of a story. Maybe an X-Force movie. They could bring him back for a moment or two, but I don't think he'd want to do it, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Same.
I don't think Hugh Jackman wants for money, to be honest. I mean, he makes Bear, and the whole thing about his body's given out, the dude was dehydrated as fuck for the Wolverine, where the entire film was just shredded. So I don't think I think it means more to him than just a few $1 million.
Yeah, he seems like he cares.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like he'd have a hard time turning down an easy paycheck.
I don't think.
But is it easy though? That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is if it's a cameo that completely breaks everything that happened in this movie. If he comes back ever as Wolverine, this movie will feel completely cheapened. Correct?
I agree.
Correct. You're telling me that from now until Hugh Jackman hangs up his acting boots, he will never play Wolverine again? Come on.
I think the only chance of it, because he's friends with Ryan Reynolds, is some kind of Deadpool situation. So coming back for a Deadpool movie or an X-Force movie basically starring Deadpool, maybe. But I don't know. I think it feels very final, and it would you're right, completely sully this film if he did.
I think that that's the most plausible version. He comes back with Deadpool, but that would just feel just terrible. I mean, this is it's the most serious, way you can go out. And the fact is, the film ends, on a very somber note. So he comes back just to crack a couple jokes in a Deadpool film. It ruins what happened. Nah.
Awesome. I'm all for it. We never got to see him with Deadpool.
Sure we did. We got to see him as Deadpool in the first Wolverine movie. We got to see him as Deadpool.
They had Woody Van.
Oh, okay, Matt. Let's don't go there.
We don't talk about that Wolverine movie.
I get that you're going for the nuclear option, but don't go there. You guys keep saying that this is the perfect way for him to go out. This movie, I felt like that what they were going for, like you said, Matt, they really didn't fully embrace the old man Logan story, but I don't know why.
No, I don't know why either.
What was really stopping them from making a good? They literally tried to make this set in a dystopian world. It was not a dystopian world at all for anyone except for mutants. They're in a casino at one point that's full of people, and they stay in a hotel room in a nice city. Give me a fucking break. This movie is not dystopian or post-apocalyptic. No. It's set 10 years from now.
I disagree, Chris. I think he's right. The fact that it's a dystopia for mutants is all that matters, because X-Men has always been about this group of discriminated against minorities and how they struggle. And so I really don't care if all the Homo sapiens are hanging out in a casino. If all of the mutant are run down and murdered or driven to the point of extinction, that's the story we're following. That's fine. Yeah. I don't think that was the biggest problem.
At the same time, the old man Logan story works so well because it's a dystopian post-apocalyptic world.
That sounds a bit like Tijuana. I don't mind the fact that it's just south of the American border. We're shades away from that happening. And I think the dragging of the old man Logan storyline into something more plausible in our timeline was actually one of the stronger choices. To me, the weak choices were the character choices. The idea that X-24 is just basically the same kind of silent, rage-filled killing machine that Deadpool was at the end of the first movie, and the same kind of where did this character come from? I don't care. What are you doing now? Character as the Silver Samurai at the end of the Wolverine. It's like they don't learn their lessons when it comes to the villains. They have such a great hero, and to throw a villain that's just, I get the embodying of an early Wolverine that was nothing but savagery, blah blah blah. The idea behind it is cool. The execution suffered so terribly because the first villain you meet isn't that important. He's 2 rungs down from the main villain. And so it just winds up cheapening the arc of the film when you throw a last-minute bad guy in with nothing but savagery and blind rage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think branching off that, sorry, what's the actor's name? He plays the DEA agent in Narcos.
Boyd Holbrook, who was completely wasted in this movie and served
That's the thing though. Matt has a point though. Like he's a very unimposing villain if you set him beside what is essentially Wolverine in his prime. So I think like that was when you open with that. This guy's not much. He has some regenerative ability. He has a prosthetic arm. But the fact is, the film makes a point when it says, that's what all it takes now to hurt Wolverine, who we all know was just some unstoppable, killing machine. And he's doing these things, but he's so old and so tired that it just takes some kind of, some schmuck with a robot hand to take him down. And then, so like when you build that up, like, oh, he can't even handle these Reavers. And then you throw what is essentially, rip off Dakin at him, and he can hold his own for even a little bit. It ruins that entire portion you set up, saying like, oh, look how tired he is, but he can still handle, his prime self. Like then, why even try and paint him as something, old and derelict? Like he's not, obviously.
And if you're going to make him this old derelict character, there needs to be a reason for it. And there was never a sufficient enough reason. It was like, oh, you're not healing up the way you used to. Oh yeah, I know why. And no, you don't. No one knows why. No one explains why. There's never a point where it's like, at least in the second, I didn't like the Wolverine all that much, but at least in that one, when his regenerative power is gone, there's an explanation for why, and then the problem is solved. But in this one, it's like, yeah, so his knuckles are pussy. And you're like, okay, when are we going to explain how or why? And why is it that just some Kool-Aid in the neck solved that? Like, it just didn't compute for me that his character was just drinking in order to deal with his pain when we don't know the source of the pain. It needed to be more tangible than, I'm just kind of running down.
I think that was...
Yeah.
Can we touch on something, though, because we're, the whole fact that this is based off of Old Man Logan, I think really, for me, being such a fan of that comic book series and the way that they handled it, the fact that they even were like, this is based off of Old Man Logan,
they didn't.
Not.
They were very specific to say this isn't the Old Man Logan
but they
story.
said like, but they said it's Old Man Logan.
No,
they were like, we took inspiration from Old Man Logan. Just making him old, the problem is Old Man Logan tells such an interesting story because of when it's set, of where it's set, and it doesn't have this whole he's dying aspect to it, which, like you said, is one of my whole problems with this film. Is the Old Man Logan story is never he's gonna die at the end. The Old Man Logan story is he's old, everyone else is dead because he killed them. Let's explore this world where essentially the board has been wiped clean. There are no prior anythings going on. This is a completely a world that you've never seen before, and let's have an older Logan explore it. This movie was, he's gonna die at the end. This has been made clear to you from the second you saw any promotional material about this movie. You knew he was dying because he didn't want to play the role anymore, or, it's time to hang up the costume, whatever reason you want to say, fine. That is the problem for me. One of the problems for me with this film is that this idea that he has to die because he's Old Man Logan. Yet they didn't give him an interesting enough story to warrant him dying.
No,
they gave him
agree.
A terrible villain, a storyline that leans too heavily, and I know you liked Patrick Stewart in this film. It leans too heavily on that relationship, which I could have done without, frankly.
The thing that made Old Man Logan and the thing that made Unforgiven, which I would say is a much larger inspiration for this movie than Old Man Logan, but the thing that made the comic book Old Man Logan so important is that Wolverine loves someone and loses someone. In the comics, it's his whole family. And in this movie, we see him lose someone, but not everyone. And in fact, the final moments of the Old Man Logan comic book, he gets somebody at the end that he treats as the reason he has to keep going. He's got someone to look after. And so I feel like this movie did a good job of dealing with the emotional payoff. It didn't do a very good job of dealing with the villain and that plot payoff. And it didn't do a good job of dealing with the why are the X-Men gone? And it really shouldn't have, edited away from the speaking, monologuing villain when we're explaining why there are no more mutants, corn syrup. That was sort of a huge moment to embellish for, villainy for good reasons based in villainy. But the biggest problem for me was that villain issue, because it does a great job of giving you people he cares about and then taking those people away and making him just hate himself, his choices, and more than anything, these villains. But if you don't care about the villains, if the villains aren't interesting, that part doesn't matter. And that's where the weakness of every one of these movies has been.
I don't know. I wanted this, like Eric said, I wanted this so badly to actually be more heavily influenced by Western.
Oh, it was a Western. This was a straight up Western.
Yeah, no, it was a Western for people who don't watch Westerns.
No, I disagree, man. I make Westerns.
It was a Western in idea only.
A Western in idea only is Terminator 2. That's a Western in idea only. This is a Western in so many visuals, in color palette, in the idea of the anti-hero. The invention of the anti-hero is quite possibly a Sergio Leone invention. And the idea that this movie is a Western is only betrayed by the villain not being particularly fascinating. It's a very internal villain. It's a very internal and quiet villain. And
well, you can have an internal, you can have a quiet villain in a Western, but the villain or villains in this movie just don't fill that slot well enough to have like your classic Western, anti-hero versus villain scenario. Like even if even if the villain is yourself, quote unquote, yourself, they can present that in a much better, much smoother way than just like throwing out like, okay, here's Clone round 2, spoilers, by the way. And just like a cheap physical manifestation of your own internal struggle, which I feel like they don't touch upon enough in the movie. Like I was telling Chris last night when we were talking about it, that in the first like hour of the movie, there's so many sequences that are just like really slow and like people with like pained looks on their faces and just Logan just drinking. And they really want to like hammer home this sort of like feeling of Logan is sick. Logan hates his life. Logan is trying to deal with all of this shit and just straight up can't anymore. But they don't explain why at all.
Exactly. And I think in the comic, you really do get a good explanation of that. And I think of all the things in this movie that are disappointing, it's the where did the X-Men go problem. And spoiler alert,
there was none.
I think maybe spoiler alert, when Professor X says what happened in Westchester, it really sounds like his first seizure happened in Westchester, where the Xavier School for the Gifted is. And I assume Xavier killed everyone by accident, and the only person who survived was Wolverine. But that's not a Wolverine story. That would be great for a movie called Charles. This movie is called Logan. And it should have been much clearer how everyone died. And it should have hung squarely around the neck of Logan that they all died. Because otherwise, it's just like he has survivor's guilt. That's not nearly as interesting as murderer's guilt. And I feel like that is the real weakness.
And he can survive because of the adamantium. That, again, also never explained.
Well, no, his healing ability.
No,
Okay. Which is imparted to him in part because of the adamantium. But again, the thing that's probably poisoning him, why he's dying. Again,
that's the thing. That's never really explained as that's the thing.
I thought it was clear, but when Eric and I were talking last night, there was some question of that in Eric's mind, right, Eric? When you and I were talking last night about why he was dying.
She's like Laura says, something in you is poisoning you. I think that's clear enough, to be honest.
No, but if Logan knew, like for a fact, that it was adamantium poisoning, don't you think he would have said something to Laura because she now has adamantium plating on her bones?
I mean, how would that roll over? Like, oh, you're like, it's like a young kid who's murdered like hundreds of people, and you're gonna tell her, someday you're gonna die. You're gonna end up like me.
Yes, Ash. That would be an interesting scene between two characters, as opposed to one character not talking the entire film because
Logan has zero filter, and so
will he now in this stage of his life, after having seen all his friends and family die, wouldn't he feel a little more sympathy? Like the more
no,
well, that's what this whole movie is. It builds up. But even at the end, he doesn't give a fuck about X-23, and then at the very end, like the last 3 minutes of the movie, he's like, "I care about somebody other than myself or whatever."
Yeah,
it's like.
Well, no, it was in the final act when he gets to, like, you know, New Mutant headquarters, and he says, bad things happen to people I care about. And she is the one who has the smart aleck response of saying, well, I guess I'll be fine then. He's clearly saying, I care about you, and this is a problem for me because all these people have been hurt. But if it had been made clear that that was not just coincidence, it was not just his own immortality that meant those people would all die, it was that he fucking killed people. Like, I killed all my friends. I can't spend time around you. I am dangerous. But because that wasn't made clear, that moment was it really just fell apart. He needed to be guiltier of the deaths of his friends for that moment to resonate.
And there's the conversation that I would have really liked to have seen between Wolverine and X-23 is the immortality conversation. Because me and Chris kind of talked about this last night, where they almost never touch on the fact, I mean, they have like briefly touched on it in the Wolverine movies, that Logan is like really old, like 200 maybe more years old, and it's like,
he was born in like 1830 or something like that, so he's been around, so he's like almost
200 years, so he's like almost 200 years old at this point, and he has now outlived literally everybody he's ever known, and so there's, I mean, how do you have to explain this to, how do you not have this conversation with this little girl? Like, how do you not have if it's adamantium poisoning, why don't you have that conversation with her? If she has the same ability as you, why don't you have the conversation with her like, look, you're going to outlive all of these people, all of these kids that you love, all of these friends that you have, all of these people that you hold dear are going to die, and you are going to outlive all of them.
Although, to be honest, if it's adamantium poisoning, then he was about 150 years old when he had the adamantium put in, and he would have lived kind of a regular life after that. So the adamantium might actually make Laura have a regular lifespan, because maybe, you know, if it's adamantium poisoning, that's actually just giving him sort of a regular human life expectancy. He got it put in like 78, 79. So that would just mean, you know, if he was pretty much an adult in the late 70s, and then he died in 2030. That's a decent life for a human.
Yeah,
good thing.
Obviously, in the comics, he's born with the extended lifespan because of the regenerative healing, and then he gets the adamantium. So it is such just a strange thing going on in this. They don't decide to address his relationship with his daughter until the end of the film, like the last 30 minutes of the film. Again, I want to circle back to that. That's because that last 30 minutes of the film is the last 30 minutes without Patrick Stewart's character.
Yeah.
And I would rather have had a film with Logan and X-23 than Logan, X-23, and Xavier, because, I mean, literally until the point where Professor Xavier dies, Laura doesn't say anything. And then after he dies, Logan has his breakdown and he's taken to that hospital. Then she starts talking. Like, why would you wait 2/3 of the film to finally have an interesting back and forth with your daughter, test tube daughter, and then expect us to give a shit going into the last third of the film? That's not how it...
Narratively, it makes a certain amount of sense to say, let's get rid of the one person he has to talk to. And as soon as that person's gone, he might talk to the person he has to talk to. But I agree that emotionally, there wasn't much emotional truth to that. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel true.
They literally hung a lantern on so much of their relationship by having her read the X-Men comic. That is like the whole reason that was in the film, was to hang a lantern on the fact that they didn't develop that relationship a whole lot, so that she understood who he was because she read that comic book.
The whole working in of like the X-Men comics as like a thing in the universe, that irked me a little bit.
That was not satisfying.
No, you can totally leave that out. That is completely unnecessary to this story. You don't need to like have this nod to the fact that he's just like, oh, it's all just plot conveniences, you know? It's like, oh, in the comic, they went to this place in fucking North Dakota that's at like these coordinates. So like those are the coordinates that we're going to go to. and shit like that. Like that's like the only reason behind it.
Yeah, it just made me want those comics to matter more.
Yeah.
Comics that were never addressed in any other X-Men film, even though clearly those comics existed during the other X-Men films, because those comics look like they're from the early 90s.
They look old.
That's like the early 90s. And all of a sudden, in the new Wolverine film, they suddenly bring them up. Did they not know that those were going on at all?
I'm totally okay with the idea that they came out after 2006. That works for me.
That to me, that again, I'm with Eric. That is just some horrendous.
Yeah, those did not need to be in the movie at all. I could have definitely lived without that.
All it did was give Laura a reason to understand who Logan is.
I think that's missing the point, though. Like it may be some shoddy script work, but I think the whole point of including the comics is that Laura gets this image of this heroic, benevolent hero who is just the image of what she wants to be and what she expects him to be. And when she finds him, he's this alcoholic jerk who doesn't care about his own daughter. So I think it makes for some interesting, realization for her and development for her. But the focus,
but you can,
the focus being, I think the whole she doesn't talk until a quarter or halfway through the film is because she's having some telepathic discussions with Xavier, and that makes sense. But it's unfortunate because what you want to hear is what she thinks of Logan, how she reacts to him, and it's a lot about how she sees him as someone who is amazing and then finds out that he's not so great, but near the end she starts to realize he was just not, he was this not so great person because he was trying to hide away all the pain he'd suffered before. And yeah, that could have been a little bit more genuine had they taken the entire thing where he killed the X-Men and not Xavier. Would have been more personal.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we're all kind of circling the same topic, is that they just they put their apples into certain baskets making this film and kind of just fully neglected others, like the villains, like his relationship with X-23, who they've said they're gonna make films about her.
I don't even know that. But stupid.
But honestly, why?
No, they set it up as if it was New Mutants, and I was wondering that would be the thing too, but. As far as I know, New Mutants is a totally different group of people, and Laura isn't signed on for anything else. And if this is like the last kind of, Wolverine arc, then what's going to happen next? I mean, because those kids, a big problem I had with the film was that, Westerns are generally very tight with characters, and they don't introduce unnecessary ones unless they serve a specific purpose. And they started introducing all these kids, and X-Men movies have always had this problem, like these precocious, extraordinary kids who come out of nowhere, but they have zero character development, but they're amazing at
like X-Men 3.
X-Men 3.
Yeah,
I mean,
like all of the X-Men movies
Origins,
have this problem, where a guy with Nightcrawler's powers is playing basketball in the first movie, and you're like, okay, but that's not Nightcrawler. Read a frigging comic book before you make this. Like, did you read the credits of what those kids were? It was like Kid Lizard Boy, guy with yellow eyes. It's like, come on, at least for the Christ's sake, call somebody Speedball. Like, give me some characters that feel like they're actual comic book characters. You're just making up garbage. And these are supposed to be the clones of pre-existing mutants. Well, make them clones of mutants we know. Storm doesn't have ice breath. It would have been interesting if it was very clear that girl was Bobby Drake, a clone of Bobby Drake. That would have been interesting. But she was not racially Bobby Drake's DNA. So it was just like there were some weird, confusing things. If you're going to go so far as to make X-23 seem like she is a complete clone of Logan, as she should be, then make the others fall in that same universe. And I had a similar problem with the fact that X-23 was the only Spanish-speaking, Mexican-born mutant kid. If they're all born in Mexico and they're all raised by this group of Mexican scientists and nurses, why does only one of them speak with any kind of accent? It was very strange.
I think the leader. See, this is one of my other problems, is that they had this kid who was very obviously, the leader of the group, and I thought they were gonna give us some sort of fan service thing, where he's Cyclops' clone. And I thought that would have been awesome, but they didn't, and he was just some fucking half-rate Earthbender. But they also had, I think, the Bobby Drake thing. She did look a little Hispanic, so I'm guessing they were all some sort of version of Hispanic, and that the fat kid could have been Storm's son. But yeah, that whole thing is just, they take these characters who are very cool and they don't even give us the fan service for it, and then they're like, oh, look, this could be the new team, but you're not going to do anything with these guys. I mean, they have a New Mutants movie in the works that has none of these people in there, and they have like fucking Arya from Game of Thrones as Wolfsbane. Like, who cares about Wolfsbane, really?
And honestly, that for me is, again, it just comes back to, for me, just a general misunderstanding of what this movie should have been, because the way I would have had it and the way it should have worked out, so that they didn't introduce 12 new characters in the last amounted to 15 minutes of the film. They should have just had them show up at Eden and them all be dead, and then have Laura go off on her own like Logan did as a character, and like doing that whole, loner in the wilderness, becoming X-23, as opposed to now she's with all these kids who were given absolutely no explanation or reasoning as to why we should care about them. That would
undermine the theme of the film, which was don't be what they made you.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, I don't agree. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you that it would have been cleaner, but it would have undermined the sort of Western. The Shane callbacks are there for a reason, and I feel like the idea that Wolverine, over 9 movies, we saw him go from a feral cage fighter to the leader of the X-Men to a sad, lonely man looking after the creator of the X-Men. And I think in order to see that Laura has the potential to have a less sad and lonely life, what they did was important. However, those characters all suck the big ones. So they should have clearly been made more interesting, or we already have a shorthand with so many characters. You are making these characters clones of them. Give me Rogue, give me Mini, all these characters I know. Like you said, that Richter should have been Cyclops. Like, give me the second chance, because that's what Laura is for Wolverine. They just missed a really good opportunity.
I mean, again, I honestly have a hard time believing that she's going to be anything different than Wolverine, because they make that very clear in the film, where they're quoting Shane talking about how when you kill someone, it's a brand on you. So again, like, they set it up at the end to be, well, she's changed, she has a chance to be something different, but her going off with those other kids, like, she's, where does that logically lead?
It's pretty clear where it leads, because there's an important difference between someone who knows it's a brand and someone who doesn't know it's a brand. And that was the thing they were trying to get to with X-24. That version of Wolverine doesn't know it matters to kill. X-23, by the end of this film, understands that killing matters. And so that was the thing that Wolverine, in his feral stage wandering the wilderness, didn't understand, and eventually came around after the Weapon X amnesia, came around to realizing. And it was Xavier that helped that happen. And the fact that Xavier and Logan helped X-23 no longer think that you just murder everything, and maybe she still will, but she'll understand it if you murder everything, that stays with you. And I think that was the message they were going for, and I agree it wasn't serviced perfectly. But there's a difference between X-23 and X-24, and that's what it is.
I feel like it wasn't serviced at all. Like, two or three lines of dialogue don't servicing.
No, I mean, in a Western that's really minimalist, sure. Yeah. But this was not minimalist.
I think
it's also not a Western.
I think the point about, like Laura having to survive with those kids, that fits. That's required for, what the narrative is saying. But, I think it would have been some interesting dynamic, if we just talk about X-24 for a second. because Daken in the comics is very much like a kind of a scorned son, and he resents Wolverine for that reason. Because he's Wolverine's natural son, which is one of the interesting parts about it. But even in the film, it was instead this kind of symbolic, metaphorical thing, like, oh, Wolverine's fighting his younger self, whom he's trying to reclaim in some way. But instead of going like, turbo mode, I think it would have been interesting to have Laura have like a meaningful engagement against him, and having Daken like speak, because Daken's like a piece of shit in the comics, and he's a very smart-mouthed asshole guy, and no one really likes him for that reason. But that's also why he's interesting, because he is, unlike Laura, he doesn't see Wolverine as this hero who he should aspire to be. He sees him as someone who's like irresponsible and didn't take responsibility for his family when he should have.
Yeah.
But that would have required like a totally different focus, and it's unfortunate that way.
They could have done it pretty easily. The Wolverine took place in Japan. Like, step one for Daken taken care of.
They even had the katana in his room.
Yeah. I mean, they could have done it. It would have been a little bit of heavy lifting, but you know what didn't need to happen? X-24. If you're going to take some time to try to explain that, I would have way rather they took time to explain Dakin. It would have been so much better.
When X-24 showed up in the film, I rolled my eyes.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is where this is going? Fucking really. Like, they further solidified in my mind why I don't like X-Men movies. Because they screw the pooch with the villains in the X-Men movies. Some of the worst X-Men movies have some of the worst comic books.
Oh, really? They seriously do.
They have villains that are practically not essential to the fucking plot.
But they rely on Magneto in almost every movie to be the villain. And the idea that they can do one without him, the only time it's ever worked is in the Wolverine movies. And yet the replacements have been way worse. Because Deadpool had pretty much no motivation, and the plural antagonist of that movie, Stryker, Deadpool, Sabretooth, doesn't really pay off in a way that's satisfying. The plural antagonist in the Wolverine, which was irritating Poison Lady and Silver Samurai, was just like, you don't really care about either of them because one of them has been absent for almost the entire film. And then in this one, the plural protagonist of One Hand Reaver Dude, Scientist who shows up 2/3 of the way through the movie, and X-24 who shows up 2/3 of the way through the movie, you don't care about them either. And, you know, the one time where X-Men not being a part of the MCU, not being part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, finally really hurt badly was this movie, because this movie needed Bruce Banner. This movie needed the Hulk, the place that Wolverine started in the comics. And the fact that we were given these three crap villains instead of the mad genius of Bruce Banner, really, that's where this movie suffered the most. There was a chance there, and when they decided to make some combination of three villains we don't care about instead of some villains we do, like the Red Skull and the Hulk, they lost it. They really lost it because the characters were going somewhere cool, and they screwed it up with the antagonist.
I think you could have taken out X-24 completely and just had it been full, just like U.S. government versus mutants. Every X-Men movie, every like Wolverine movie ends up being mutant versus mutant because for some reason normal people can't fight mutants effectively ever. When all they needed to do was use some fucking adamantium bullets and it would have been over in 3 seconds.
Unless it's the first Wolverine movie where an adamantium bullet just gives you amnesia, but in the third one, it blows your frigging skull off. Like, there's no consistency between these films at all. I guess it depends
on the caliber, is what they're saying.
It depends on the caliber.
But hey, you know what? To defend the films like Ash will, because when we talked about X-Men Apocalypse last year, Ash defended the continuity errors between Days of Future Past and Apocalypse that they never explained and continue to not explain and never will explain. They don't really give a shit about continuity.
They don't.
Well, and
really
you know what? When they don't even try, when they don't even try for continuity, when they come up with something like Deadpool, they do really cool stuff. When they try a little bit, it's just pathetic because you realize that that someone like Kinberg has no plan. They don't have a Kevin Feige there. They don't have someone who's masterminding a bunch of really good movies that fit together into a brilliant jigsaw puzzle. They're just making a bunch of kind of okay movies that don't even belong in the same universe. And I think if
it were me, I would never let Simon Kinberg near another superhero movie because he was involved with Fan Forsting.
Yeah,
so that guy
he made pretty much all the bad ones.
He needs to take a hike back to not superhero movies involved ever. Go make dramas, okay? Sorry.
Just dumb this movie down. Cut out all the unnecessary shit. Cut out X-24 completely. I don't care about. We already have one Logan clone in this movie. I don't need another one. If you're going to have like a Logan-esque like mutant adversary, do his son. Do a natural born son that like he never was involved with and who hates him and who is like now spent the majority of his life like looking for him, like wanting to get revenge or some bullshit like that. And then at the end of the movie, he basically chooses his test tube baby, who he never even knew existed, over his natural born son, who he just forsaken. Or just do just do U.S. government versus like last group of mutants on Earth. Cut out all the other kids because I don't care about them. All I care about is X-23. And that's really easy to do. They get to the place in freaking North Dakota, and there's just like a note that says, "Sorry, we left yesterday. This is where we're going." So that something that would have some of the kids made it, but we don't have to deal with other characters that like don't fucking matter.
Well, something that would have made this satisfy a lot of things for me is that we're saying maybe adamantium poisoning is killing Wolverine. And then X-24 shows up with Sabretooth's haircut from the first Wolverine movie. I would have loved it if instead of X-24, it was Sabretooth. Sabretooth shows up. He does not have adamantium. He is therefore stronger. And finally, the fact that he's not part of the Weapon X program makes him the brother that's able to whip the hell out of Wolverine. That would have been great.
Why would we bring a film full circle, sir?
Right?
Why would we bring anything full circle?
Why do you want part 3 to make part 1 make more sense?
By the way, Ash, the bullet that he's shot in the head with, that the X-24 is shot in the head with at the end of this film, is the bullet that he saved from X-Men Origins.
I thought so,
Wolverine.
Yeah. It's the same bullet.
Just so you're aware. But again, it happened more than one movie ago, so what the fuck do they
continuity?
Who's gonna remember? Because that movie was terrible, obviously, so it doesn't even count.
Yeah, there were a lot of missed opportunities at the script level in this film. I mean, the production level of this thing was beautiful, I thought. It felt like a Western in all of the tonal ways that you want it to look like one. I thought Hugh Jackman killed it. He was fantastic, as always. He is always an excellent Wolverine, insofar as a good-looking tall man can be Wolverine. But, you know, the real errors of this film were at the script stage. And, you know, that's unfortunately, Mangold is given a lot of the credit for what we got. So thanks, Mangold.
They don't cast ugly people.
I mean, yeah, they're not going to cast a hairy dwarf Canadian as Wolverine. I think what we got was sufficient. If you really want competition for Cyclops, like for fucking Jean Grey, you can't have some little gremlin who is just angry all the time.
Wait. And competition, he heals. Like, what competition is there? It's built into his character that he could kill any of them at any second.
Like, romantic interest-wise. I mean, you have, like, Famke Janssen, and then you have, like, Scott Summers. Like, yeah, Wolverine cast.
Oh, okay, great. But honestly, like, that whole plot line in the first and second and third X-Men movies about them fighting over her was complete garbage. Was never really fully dealt with because he just ends up killing her.
But it would have been way more interesting if it wasn't Famke Janssen choosing between two chiseled Adonis-looking men. Like, the cool thing in the comic is that this character of Jean Grey is attracted to something that she can feel because she's Jean Grey, not because she's got eyes and can tell Hugh Jackman's a good-looking man. Because she's Jean Grey and can feel what's inside of Wolverine, there's an attraction there. And I think casting it between, good-looking Cyclops and good-looking Wolverine, that takes away what makes that love triangle fascinating.
Yeah.
Hot Dude 1 and Hot Dude 2. Man, this is hard.
You're right, it is.
I mean, that is what it devolved into.
Oh!
She was a little...
I mean, you're right, Ash. That is what it devolved into. But again, I think that this just comes back to the people that work on comic book movies. And we can talk about Marvel, DC, or the non-Marvel, non-DC films. A lot of the people that work on comic book movies don't have a very good grasp of what A, makes the characters good in the comic books, B, the comic books in general, and C, what you can do to not only appease comic book fans, but also make it interesting and intelligible for people who don't read comic books. Most everyone, well, not most everyone, but a lot of the folks involved with comic book movies don't seem to get that. The MCU folks, Kevin Feige over there at Marvel Studios, they seem to get a pretty good grasp on it. But a lot of everybody else really
like Jon Favreau or somebody like Joss Whedon, like you put people who know what makes these characters tick, what makes them brilliant, then you get great movies. But when you put Zack Snyder, who thinks CrossFit is what makes Batman, you wind up with a garbage movie.
Okay, well, that's true. So that's
Here
true.
Comes Ash.
I'm not
Ash, come on.
The Batman Superman thing. Joss Whedon's kind of like I don't know what the word is. He's just, I don't know, he's a prick. I don't think he understands characters either. Because the Avengers movies are some of the most unambitious bullshit I've ever seen. They really are. for what they were.
But they're perfect.
Yeah, they're perfect
the thing about them is
they're
that
marketable.
They're perfect at being what they need to be, which is comic book movies about comic book characters. I mean, they're not adventuring outside of the box because Marvel built the box, and by the time they were making Avengers movies, the box was still only half built. They made this a thing, and this wasn't a thing before. It was like an occasional, like, oh, look, X-Men 2 is good, but X-Men 1 and 3 are garbage. Blade 2 is good, 1 and 3 are garbage. Like, you're just in this... Yeah, you're in this world where some of these movies suck and some of them are great and no one ever plans them out. And, you know, Batman Begins is good, but Dark Knight sucks and Dark Knight Rises is even worse. Like, there are these things because no one planned them. And then Kevin Feige made something different and special and incredible that nobody ever thought of before. He invented a way of making movies that's essentially making television. So of course it's not going to be ambitious as a film because it's ambitious as a concept, and that's why they've made more money than God.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's I just don't.
It's not
like
adventurous. It's not adventurous filmmaking.
And even then, like you can say, like, you know, they could have had something better than like Loki as a villain, as terribly motivated as he is. You know, like, oh, you will bow before me.
But it's perfect because in the first Avengers comic book and in the first Avengers the Ultimates comic book, the villains are Loki and the Chitauri, respectively. So Joss Whedon, as a brilliant lover of comic books, takes the two canon first villains and gives us an exceptional adaptation of both of those stories at once.
Yeah, but
You're right, not adventurous filmmaking, but my God, what a perfect team-up film. It's the first one in the existence of comic books, and it's incredible.
I don't know. I actually, you know, if we're, you know, and I think that we do need to talk because this is the first time in a while that we've had a chance to talk about non-MCU, non-DC films. I mean, that's okay. So that's kind of like the other weird thing here is you have these films right here, the Fox X-Men / Daredevil films are
Sony and there's 5 Spider-Man.
All comic book movies. Right. But I mean, I'm talking now, like the Spider-Man movies, you know, the Spider-Man movies, those movies, that's a whole different conversation and a fist fight that some people.
And some of the highest grossing comic book movies of all time. Like these are Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 are really successful. And honestly, the Amazing Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man movie ever made. It's unfortunate the second one sucked. And so those are spectacular in their own way. But
that's a freaking
I like all the grunts.
I don't know. Tobey Maguire is the worst Spider-Man possible. And so putting Andrew Garfield in a serviceable plot makes for a way better story.
That's true,
just
but
another...
I don't know.
Tobey Maguire is the perfect Peter Parker, in my opinion. Like, Andrew Garfield was like, he was hipster Peter Parker. He was cool. He had a hot girlfriend. He skateboarded and shit. Like, it was just too much that wasn't Peter Parker.
Peter Parker has a hot girlfriend.
Yeah, but he has a hot girlfriend for reasons.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, okay, but like, he's not Supermom Mary Jane. Like, you can't expect me to believe that Gwen Stacy is like this guy. Like, if you cast Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, she's like, oh, she's nerdy. You know, not a lot of guys like her, and she likes this dude.
Wait. So you're saying that they didn't believably cast people in certain roles in comic book movies?
Their justification was ugly.
I don't know. Putting Snaggletooth in as Mary Jane, the most beautiful woman alive, in the first 3 Spider-Man movies is ridiculous. And then putting
what? Kirsten Dunst, the national
Kirsten Dunst?
No.
Kirsten Dunst? No, man. Snaggletooth couldn't make Snaggletooth. Unfortunately,
oh my God.
got less attractive after her first movie, and she's a frigging 9-year-old in her first movie. She just gets worse. It's a disaster, that girl. But I gotta say that Emma Stone.
Maybe it's because I haven't seen the original Spider-Man movies in a while.
Go back.
I have nothing but fond memories of those films.
The only one that you have to watch is Spider-Man 2 because it's just a full-on.
Spider-Man 2 is the perfect superhero movie. It like full stop.
It is great.
It should be the template for everything that's good about superhero films.
Excuse me, The Dark Knight is the perfect superhero movie. Excuse me, you have triggered my nerd rage.
Okay, a different type of superhero film.
Spider-Man 2,
yeah, one that's not a
Spider-Man
superhero
2
movie.
is solid from front to back, whereas the first Spider-Man movie has the most brilliant first half, and then the second half is bloody atrocious the moment Green Goblin shows up. But the great thing about Spider-Man 2 is nothing ruins it. The other Spider-Man movies, something ruins, but nothing ruined Spider-Man 2, and that's why it's great.
Yep.
Okay, but Chris, you were going to make a point about the movies that are not Marvel Studios Marvel movies.
Right. They sit in this weird in-between area of the people that are involved with them are either really excited and are really dedicated to making them Deadpool. Deadpool was an amazing film because not only did Ryan Reynolds and Tim Miller, right? Not only did they really go out of their way to make sure that film happened the way that they wanted, because they knew if it didn't happen the way they wanted, it wouldn't be true to the character, kind of like Logan. As opposed, I mean, Deadpool is much more true to the Deadpool character than Logan is to Wolverine or any of the X-Men movies.
I disagree. This Logan movie was a great example of who Wolverine is.
Is it better than Deadpool?
No,
it's different.
But it doesn't make. It's not a better movie, but it does a fine job of Wolverine's character.
I'm not talking about one-to-one comparison. I'm talking about if we're looking at, are they successful in telling a story that the character could believably inhabit from not only the comic book, but what my preconceived notion and a lot of people's preconceived notions are of the characters, which kind of all sync up unless you're a really, strict purist. I think Deadpool is a better movie, but the point I was trying to make is these Fox superhero movies, they occupy this weird space where there's like 20 bad ones and 3 good ones.
Because there's no top-down planning.
The 3 good ones, right. The 3 good ones feature characters that we love doing things that make sense, and the other ones are just like throw shit at the wall and see what happens. Looking at the way the MCU has been working, it really is disappointing that, and I mean, Hugh Jackman said it himself, that we may never get to see Wolverine in this MCU.
Outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though he tweeted
okay
a
with
picture
that.
of it,
Whoever
which
thought,
was like everyone's biggest tease.
And I'm okay with that. I read James Mangold wrote this thing about how, Wolverine is the least branded egomaniac hero you can imagine. He just winds up being in a place where he can do some good, and he doesn't want to be like have people say, "Oh, here comes the Wolverine," because the Wolverine logo is in the sky, and then he appears in the costume you expect the Wolverine to be in. No, tank top and jeans is great because this guy is not egotistical enough to need a costume. And I like that on
Okay, hold on. The
principle.
reason they didn't have him in that costume is because they cast Hugh Jackman, who's a good-looking guy, and he would look goofy as hell.
No,
I'm not sure. It was like armor plating. I
costume,
think it would have looked fine.
Yeah, they had a cool idea that was samurai-based. It was based in a samurai costume. It would have worked in the Wolverine, but it's not because they didn't want to cover his face.
What I'm saying is, like, they have a guy who's good-looking, so they need to make sure he has, like, an open shirt and a tank top.
No.
You know what I mean? It's
yeah, basically.
Well, we really don't. But that was like form fitting, right? So that was like the other thing, right? Like when they did put him in an outfit, it was like a hot leather suit that was like
because
black
they were
and form
afraid
fitting
of
and like
costume.
made him look
They
sexy.
were afraid of the yellow spandex costumes on everybody.
I think they were afraid to embrace who the characters
actually
absolutely
are. The first X-Men movie helped create our modern golden age of superhero movies. Yeah. So, they had to dip their toe in a certain extent. And unfortunately, they created this whole black motorcycle costume thing. But I got to say, the First Class managed to show Joss Whedon's X-Men costumes pretty faithfully. And so I think they were just most worried about putting Wolverine in something that they couldn't have a good explanation for. But at the end of the Wolverine, they gave a decent explanation. And it was, a samurai gift. Because it does have, you can see the Bushido in that, I guess. It's kind of interesting. But ultimately, they never had the egotistical enough movie for it to happen. There was never the time when he needs to be branded by some external force other than the X-Men, and they already handed him a leather motorcycle jacket.
I think if we're just talking about the entire thing, they're a little afraid to go, over that edge to really stay faithful to the comics, because I think that's like a really big problem because, this is what happens with all the X-Men movies is, Origins, they didn't want to call him Deadpool. Like a pool of the X-Men genes. He's a dead man with a pool. They have these stupid little puns and shit because I think what's weird is that they're afraid to say things that could be interpreted as like comic exclusive terms so that like they don't want to alienate the common man. But then what they end up doing is putting in these generic no-name villains that really are just kind of half-baked parodies of what the characters really are. And so you end up not being faithful to either side. That's why, you have, they called him X-24 because it's clever, not because they wanted to say Dakin. Because if they introduced like 2 clones, like, oh, how do we explain that? Well, let's just add another clone. That's just him. And that's kind of sad.
And let's not forget that Xander Rice is a character in the comic. So, but again, that doesn't even matter because only the ardent fans will know that. So they even do that in this film. Like Donald Pierce is a character in the X-Men universe. Like he is a goddamn like straight up like more cyborg than he is in this film. But again, what it boils down to is ultimately they didn't give a shit about certain aspects of this film, and the villains are always the one thing they don't give a shit about unless it's X-Men Apocalypse, and then the whole film is about the character, but they somehow still manage to screw it up. And I know you disagree with me. I know you disagree with me.
Bad.
Yeah, I mean, Apocalypse is a disaster, and that's because they tried to embrace the way characters should look without grounding it in a world that we cared about. And I think the thing that X-Men has struggled with, and the thing that the MCU has been brilliant at, is showing characters looking the way we want them to look and putting it in a world that makes sense. They've had a few missteps, like Captain America's Avengers costume at the end is a bit silly, and they realize that, and they have never given him that costume again because of that. His World War II costume is wicked, so they just sort of worked on that. But then they made the same mistake with Daredevil at the end of the first season, and they've improved that costume, but the sort of cowl around the ears thing has never been a good look for anything. And I think they've had some errors in the MCU, but there's been universal errors in the X-Men universe, and they very much tried to stay away from silly, flashy costumes that don't feel natural until X-Men Apocalypse, and everyone looks so stupid in that movie. So they really need to figure that out. They need to make a production design choice. And I think in the MCU, they made such a great production design choice with Iron Man that it caused a cascading effect of, in this world, Thor is wearing what is appropriate. In this, we'll put the helmet on him once and then that's it. But we're going to have him look like this because it makes more sense. And they managed to do this with all of these characters, and they all feel like they exist in the same world. They've never gotten that right with the X-Men. It's always been either a half measure or just bonkers, stupid looking.
So to close out this kind of all-encompassing comic book superhero movie conversation, and this is something we did on our Rogue One podcast, still has yet to see the light of day due to technical difficulties. For you personally, because I've never asked you, what is your double-party question? What is your favorite comic book movie, and what is in your mind the perfect?
Okay, my favorite comic book movie is the 1989 Batman film because it has all of the phantasmagoric magic that makes Batman's universe Batman. I was 9 when I saw it. The summer of 1989 was a magical Batman summer, and it's made an imprint on me that I think I'll take to my grave. The best comic book movie, I would say, is Avengers. It manages to take everything that makes the comic books what they are, every iteration of them, which is friggin' crazy impossible, but Whedon killed it. He did an incredible bullseye with that film. Brings in for the first time multiple franchises to create the world's first mega franchise tentpole movie, and did it in a way that had heart, that had humor, that had stakes, and it's something that no one has ever been able to do again, not even Joss Whedon.
What about you, Ash?
Favorite comic book movie? That just objectively has to be The Dark Knight. I mean, people will call it, it's not really a comic book movie, it's not really a superhero movie. But, if it's being classified as having Batman, then it's my favorite, easily. And I think for a lot of reasons that people have outlined before, I don't think we need to go into them here, but perfect, like I said before, is Spider-Man 2. It's the perfect blend of, personal struggle and a properly motivated villain, properly, fleshed out characters. And towards the end, it concludes in a meaningful way, but not in one that makes you feel like, that was just a resolution. It was a believable conclusion. And if you copied the story arc from that film in like every comic book movie that you need a sequel to, I think you would get some really good ones.
What about you, Eric? I'm putting you on the spot.
Favorite comic book movie? My favorite comic book movie. Does Super Mario Brothers count as a comic book movie?
Go fuck yourself. You know what? The fact that you fucking... God damn it, you motherfucker. I should have known. I should have known.
I'm gonna work it into every podcast.
Yeah.
I think my favorite. God, it's tough, man. I think I'm gonna have to go with The Dark Knight as well. It seems to be a popular opinion with a lot of people, and I know I'm gonna catch a lot of shit for that, but I don't know.
And rightfully so.
I like it. It's a fucking great movie. Batman's always been my favorite, comic and everything like that, except for Spawn, which they'll never be able to make a good Spawn movie. Actually, maybe now they will.
Maybe now.
McFarlane's always working. He's always working on one. He just never tells us why.
Maybe now they can make one. If they ever make a good Spawn movie, I will fucking shit. But a perfect comic book movie, I don't know, man. You know what? I'm going to go with Iron Man, the first Iron Man. That movie is so freaking good, and it introduces the character of Tony Stark and then Iron Man in such a good way, and sort of starts off this whole Marvel Universe thing that, I mean, it's like, it's the reason why we have, 2 Marvel movies a year now. So.
Yep. Oh, 3 or 4 this year, actually.
Oh, God damn it. What about you, Chris?
So for me, and I said comic book or, superhero, but maybe I shouldn't have said should have said it's not limited to DC or Marvel. I don't know if that would have changed y'all's answers at all. I assume that you didn't tether yourself to the 2 big brands. But for me, my favorite comic book movie is and will always be The Rocketeer. It's the movie that Captain America should have been. And it's the movie that they brought Joe Johnston in to make, and then he didn't get to make it. So The Rocketeer is still my favorite. Billy Campbell is perfectly cast. You have Timothy Dalton as one of the best Nazis ever.
He's like one of the best villains of all time, yeah.
If Indiana Jones had ever gotten a chance to fight Neville Sinclair, that would have been awesome and hilarious, and just Timothy Dalton, James Bond versus Indiana Jones would be great. And then for perfect, I'm going to have to say 1989 Batman. I think everything about that movie just works so well.
Yep.
We talked about this, Eric and I talked about this a little while back, that Jack Nicholson is still perfectly cast as the Joker. He is the screen Joker. And,
you're damn right.
If you could have him on screen with Mark Hamill's voice coming out of his mouth, you would have the perfect Joker, period. But Jack Nicholson's voice and his characterization of the Joker is so damn good on its own that it would almost be doing an injustice to his performance to have Mark Hamill's amazing Joker voice coming out of his mouth. But then you also have Michael Keaton as Batman, which I know that's always been kind of like a fucking really Michael Keaton, but I think he works so well because he's like the unassuming Batman as opposed to the ripped, jacked Ben Affleck, Christian Bale.
He's like a nerdy Batman.
Well, he's the only believable Bruce Wayne and Batman we've ever had.
I mean, Val Kilmer was a pretty good Bruce Wayne. I'll give him that.
Yeah, but he was a terrible Bruce Wayne because you could tell he was Batman. He was so stoic and dull. And and I mean, George Clooney had the opposite problem because he was a goofball billionaire in and out of the suit. The great thing about Michael Keaton was that you could tell that this was a man who was just this little bit on the spectrum. He needed Alfred to keep him alive, really. But when he was in that suit, he was this just brutal machine. And it was a beautiful dichotomy that Michael Keaton built that no one has ever gotten right.
And, people always say Batman and Robin is terrible. I mean, Batman and Robin is bad, but let's be honest. If you look at it through the lens of they made a 1964 Batman movie in the late 90s, I mean, that's all it was. Nobody ever wants to have that conversation, but it was a campy Batman movie when people weren't making campy superhero movies. But 1989 Batman... still for me, it does so much right that, like Matt said, they haven't been able to replicate. Kind of like what makes Spider-Man 2 so great. It's a lot of the stuff they did in Spider-Man 2 that was so great. No one has really been able to replicate. Even Marvel themselves they've never been able to re-replicate the success of Spider-Man 2. So, well, let's wrap this fucker up. Starting with you, Matt, rating out of 5 for Logan and best performance.
Out of 5, I'd give it 4. It was really good, but it came apart in the ending for me, and ultimately the characters didn't have the send-off I was hoping for. And the best performance in this, hands down, as wonderful as Hugh Jackman is, and as delightful as Patrick Stewart is, Dafne Keen killed it. That little girl as the new Wolverine, I'm 100% behind that. I want to see more of that.
What about you, Ash?
I'm just going to copy. 4 out of 5. Same thing. There's things wrong with it, but I think, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. You know, in the years to come, I think people will look back and be like, you know, this was a pretty decent send off. We're in like the honeymoon phase of the movie, and soon we're gonna get like people saying, you know, this movie is so shit. You know, looking back on it, so terrible, and eventually it'll mellow out. But yeah, also Dafne Keen. I mean, that girl is like, she's a Russian. That's her first movie. She's a Russian gymnast, I think. I mean, that's just exceptional. Like, not to mention the fact that she has an accent too. So I think, easily exceptional performance. And I'm glad we're getting like some good child actors. And yeah, that's mine.
And it's exciting that the new Wolverine is Hispanic. I think that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Well, technically she's Russian, but
that's if they ever go anywhere with it. Which
they're gonna make that shitty fucking New Mutants movie with a bunch of stupid ass characters that no one cares about. And that's unfortunate.
And her accent is going to be gone. It's just going to be an American accent. There's going to be she doesn't speak Spanish once in the movie. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Oh no, she does. It's just loud.
No, he's saying in the sequel.
in the new movie.
Fair, yeah.
Come on, there's no such thing as racial diversity in Hollywood. You guys know that. It's either black or white. Exactly. That's it. Come on.
And they must be American.
Yeah, that's right. What about you, Eric?
I'm going to give this movie like a 3.5 out of 5. There's a lot of things that I really like about this movie, but there's a lot of things you mentioned last night that you thought that my opinion on this movie was going to be similar to my opinion on Rogue One. And it kind of is. Like, I really wanted to love Rogue One a lot, and I really wanted to like this movie a lot. And there's a lot of things about both of those movies that I really, really like. But there's just like a handful of things that just irk me enough to where like I can't really decide if I would like watch this movie again. Best performance, I'm going to give it to Hugh Jackman. He was absolutely fantastic. Best portrayal of like Wolverine that he's probably will ever do, if he ever does it again. I mean, this whole movie is him. So without a solid performance from him, then this movie is absolutely nothing.
For me, it's a 3 out of 5. And there's a caveat to that. If he ever comes back and plays Wolverine again, which I think they'll do something to get him back. Again, me being a cynic, it's all about the money, but I think somehow, some way they'll get him back to be on screen with Deadpool, or like Matt said, in an X-Forces movie. It'll go down to a 2 out of 5 because they cheapen this movie by doing that.
Yep.
I think that once they see how much money this movie made, they're just going to start throwing things at him.
Dude, what if they do like a Star Wars thing where you have X-23 and then there's just like the ghost of Wolverine?
X-23, like an X-Men story?
Yeah. You just have like...
I mean, didn't they already do that with Wolverine, X-Men Origins? Or
they're going to make Magneto. Oh, God. That never happened.
They have like Jedi, like Wolverine, like showing her the ropes from like
he just
beyond
stares
the
at
grave.
Her at the end of the film. You inherited my claws.
If he ever does come back, it'll go down to 2 out of 5 because they'll just cheapen everything that this movie, for a lot of people does so well. And best performance, obviously, Hugh Jackman. I'll give a shout out to Stephen Merchant, who they didn't give enough time to.
Oh, yeah.
And he actually has some pretty dramatic acting abilities for someone who's known as, Ricky Gervais's buddy on Idiot Abroad.
Yeah.
And, from The Office. So,
It's interesting to me that in X-Men Apocalypse, they have Caliban and he's like very German. And then in this movie, they have Caliban and he's very British.
It's been 30 years. Who knows where he went to? And plus, Caliban gets turned into both death and pestilence by various versions of Apocalypse. So he's been through the ringer, that guy.
True.
Well, let's just hang that lantern on that fucker right there.
Oh, Jesus.
Welcome to the X-Men series where we literally don't give a shit about continuity.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. What do you guys think this film has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Oh, I'm sure it's got like a 90-something.
It's like a 94 or something, probably.
Yeah, I'd say 96.
93%. Hugh Jackman makes the most of his final outing as Wolverine with a gritty, nuanced performance in a violent but surprisingly thoughtful superhero action film that defies genre conventions. I would agree until that last part where it talks about defying genre conventions.
It doesn't.
Only if they're talking about the fact that he's dead and supposedly is staying dead.
Yeah, so, I wanted this movie to be a Western so bad, and it didn't quite get there. If it would have been a fucking full-on Western, this movie would have been the shit.
If Wolverine had been played by Jack Palance, I'm all there. If it had been played by Jack Palance, aka Vladimir Planyuk, I would have been all in. So, before I talk about the next Culture Cast, starting with you, Mr. Campagna, anything you want to plug? I heard there's this little project that you've been working on that's getting a lot of praise. Talked about it at the beginning of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, TacticalGirls is available on Amazon Prime in, 4 countries now. It's in the U.S., it's in the U.K., it's in Japan, and it's in Germany. So if you live in any of those places or can VPN there and you've got Amazon Prime, you can watch TacticalGirls. And I get paid, which is pretty nice. It's an awesome, female-led, wacky Three Stooges comedy show about these 3 girls who dress up to attack their boss's house because their boss is an asshole. It's fun, wacky, ridiculous, and we're hoping to make more. So have a watch. It's won some awards. So apparently, it's pretty good.
What about you, Mr. Ashvinder? Yeah, I use your full name.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything in the pipeline, or really. But yeah, keep following Culture Shock. It's a pretty all right place.
Except for when Ash and I get into fistfights about Oscar movies.
Exactly. And I always end up on top,
Oh, just the place I like you. Why
do I never get invited to these parties?
Oh, brother. What about you, Eric?
Nothing quite yet. There's some stuff that's coming soon, but there's nothing really to talk about yet. So, yeah, nada. All pretty boring still.
You can follow me at Culture Stash on Twitter, and if you like the Culture Cast, we're on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and we do it sometimes live on Mixlr. Leave us a favorable review on iTunes so that other people can listen to us talking about movies and, just shooting the shit about movies and whatnot. Kultureshock.com is where you can go to read Ash's written reviews, my written reviews, and, just get into a little bit of trouble on our website. There's a lot of good stuff to read on there. Patreon.com/culture_shocked is where you can go to kick a couple dollars our way. There's some new backer reward tiers. So if you want to go check those out, give us a couple dollars. We'll give you something in return. No, this is not quid pro quo, but it kind of sounds like it. And then wavoka.bandcamp.com is where you can go to check out Eric's band that he continues to neglect to plug, but I'll do it for him. They provide the intro outro music for the Culture Cast. That song is Lament off of their first album Soros, and you can pick it up over at wavoka.bandcamp.com. Next week we're going to be talking about Rocky 3. I have never even seen Rocky 1, so shame on me.
Oh my god.
You're American too.
What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, it really doesn't have anything. It's not like he's from Philadelphia. If he was from Philadelphia, then it would be weird.
I'm from West Philadelphia, born and raised.
You shut your fucking mouth right now. Stop it.
Let's do an a cappella version, the 4 of us. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Rocky 3, and then later next week, we're going to be talking about Kong Skull Island, otherwise known as my dream film about a giant monkey wreaking havoc on Tom Hiddleston and Samuel L. Jackson.
Dude, yeah.
So big thanks to Matt and Ash for sitting down and talking Logan with us. Finally, it was not a contentious podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was good to all bitch about the same problems.
And make sure to check out next week's Culture Cast.